So Laura, let's bring in Dave, Navarro, and PADHiA and kick this thing off. Hi, Dave.
How are you?
Hi, PADHiA.
Thanks for having us. It's an honor to be here, man.
Yes,
it really
thank
is.
you.
It really is.
Well, thanks for coming. Quick introduction. Dave is a well-known musician, activist, and artist. He is here today with PADHiA as part of the collaborative art project Dual Diagnosis. PADHiA is a Los Angeles-based street artist, designer, and writer. Her work can best be described as psychological commentary. So a little background before we start. As I said earlier, we've all been through a pretty tough year. And, Dave and I and PADHiA were talking the other day and with COVID-19, the pandemic, as well as the election and job layoffs and, personally, even my company, we got through about June and decided we're not going to be able to produce any events. And, I have 15 employees and, everybody's kind of on furlough. So it's been pretty tough. And I found myself getting depressed a few times this year, that's for sure. But Dave and PADHiA have a really good story about dual diagnosis. And I want to talk about that a bit. And then we'll have some fun. We'll meet some fantastic artists, and we're going to take a tour through Dave's house and see some of his collection. So Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about dual diagnosis?
Well, I initially discovered PADHiA's work on the street. I saw a piece of hers and I think I just reached out to her.
Yeah, it said, "Love me anyways."
Yeah, it said, "Love me anyways." And I was like, I love that. So I reached out to her and I bought a piece from her and we became super tight.
Did you move a Warhol to hang it or did I make that part up?
You can believe that. She can believe that. I think
that's how I tell it.
But yeah, you can tell that in the story. But and we really hit it off as friends and as artists and started just collaborating almost instantly. And, both PADHiA and I suffer from mental disorders and struggle with, I personally with drug addiction, with depression, bipolarity, you name it. PADHiA has her own set of circumstances.
More PTSD, depression, anxiety.
Yeah, and we both really mirror each other in that way, and we connected on that. And we started toying with the concept of if it had not been for these maladies in our lives, we would not have some of the gifts that we have in our lives. And those are the things that have helped us push through the struggle and create. And we decided to create, I don't even know what you would call it, because dual diagnosis, we are a clothing line for sure, but we're more than that. We do installations, we do fine art, we do street art, we donate, we do charitable work. And our message really is to try and help lift the stigma off this mental illness thing being a sad, shameful, horrible thing. And in fact, if you're surviving with it and working towards it, that you're actually a hero and great strengths come from it. And I always talk to people about that. I go, Vincent van Gogh would have been locked up today as a lunatic, but he didn't. And now we get to see his works. And part of his genius was his insanity. And I think that when we decided to just tap in and express and own what's going on with us, this whole world evolved for us. And PADHiA can be more specific in terms of broadening that out, but we really connected on just creating something that we were proud of, that we thought was cool, that made our maladies strengths as opposed to weaknesses. And as a result, this whole multimedia thing that we're doing has evolved. If you want to chime in on some more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we're kind of working to create a reframe here, because there are cultures where if you're schizophrenic, they believe that you have one foot in two worlds. And, isn't that beautiful? And isn't that enchanting? Don't you want to know someone like that? Yeah. Instead of our culture here where it's disease and fear. And it's the same thing with bipolar. Anybody that I've known personally in my life who's just a powerful visionary, artist, creator, musician, whatever, they've all been diagnosed with bipolar. And it's heartbreaking to see them go through their life feeling lesser and broken and shame, when in fact, they have this incredibly beautiful creative energy running through them, which is their genius, and it's their superpower. So overall, you know, what we're working to accomplish here is to create a shift in our culture where we stop pathologizing our mental differences and instead celebrate the beauty of uniqueness.
Yes. And I could also add in terms of what PADHiA is talking about, that the people who have influenced me in my life artistically and musically, by and large, every single one of them struggled with something.
Yeah.
Every single one of them, from Rothko to Hendrix. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are the people, what?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So like to me, those are my heroes, and all my heroes are people who have similar things that we share. And why not use those tools to grow and to help other people say, you know, I do have this thing, I do have this malady, but maybe I can hone it into something beautiful and share that with the world and pass on hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we separate out people who struggle with depression, anxiety, and trauma, and we label them as mentally ill, and you know, we put them over there. And that's a problem because of stigma and shame. But it's also just not true. There is no separate diseased population that struggles with those things. Those things are just aspects of the human experience. And we all go through them at different points in our lives and in different ways. Those are the things that connect us and that make us human.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about how you were saying that we're not just about the mental health aspect, that everybody who feels like an outsider is a member of our club.
Yeah. So exactly.
Well, like artists, I mean, you know, Dave, we were talking about the flyers you made for your band, and you know, tell us that story about, I mean, artists are the same way. They come to our shows and they're standing.
Sure. Let me just finish up. Let PADHiA finish up the last thing we were saying, and then I'll tell you that.
I just wanted to say, you know, beyond mental illness, this project is for people who are just different, you know, not so much in LA, but in most other parts of the country, there is a very narrow range of acceptable ways to be and to live and to behave. And if you don't fall within this, you know, electric fencing of this narrow margin, you're ostracized, you're bullied, you're scary, you're weird. And so with this project, you know, we're hoping to reach those people and to make them feel proud and to celebrate that they're wildly different.
And they have family.
Yeah,
and
family, exactly.
And they will be part of our family. And the thing about dual diagnosis is you don't have to buy a t-shirt to be a part of our family. You know what I mean? Like, that's not what we're about. You can walk down the street and see some street art or fine art or whatever you want. And it's free. The messaging is free. We have a manifesto and a short film on our www.dualdiagnosis.com site where it's all explained, and we're just giving it away. If you want to wear it, that's cool too.
Our wearable proclamations. Yeah.
But when you were talking about the Jane's Addiction early flyers, so my introduction into the art world, I grew up, my dad was senior vice president at Gray Advertising, which meant I had a drafting table and blades and letraset and all the old school tools of making layouts at home. So 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, I'm sitting at a drafting table with a blade and letraset and making up my own stuff. So when Jane's Addiction came around and it came time to hand out flyers, like, we took great pride in our flyers. We handmade them, and we were taping pieces of words that we cut out of magazines because I needed a dress for the Roxy, or for the Rainbow. So I had to cut it out and tape it on there, or use, back then it was rubber cement with the erasable rubber cement. Love that, still use it. But, and then I would go to my dad was in advertising. I would go to his office and Xerox off the flyers that we handmade. And the most humbling and I think back at funny stories is that Perry Farrell and I used to go hand flyers out that we physically made.
Oh my God.
Get people to come see our bands. And, you know, if you were around when flyers were coming out and it wasn't just an Instagram post, the artist himself had to physically hand it to you. So we were physically handing things to people, and they'd look at it, they'd drop it, they'd crumple it up and throw it back at us. I mean, it was the most humbling experience. And like, I'm so grateful for that, because it lit our fire. We were like, fuck these guys, they're not getting it. We're gonna make sure they get it. You know what I mean? And I think that we did, you know, in a small way. So, but that question ties into like my introduction into being into graphically an artist, and then how using imagery in conjunction with music was such an imperative part of Jane's Addiction's whole whole scene. I mean, I think of Jane's Addiction as a touring art installation, not as a rock band. And so that to me was my early days. And then I grew up and got older, and I got into oil painting, and my OCD wouldn't allow me to get oil paint everywhere because it gets everywhere. So it makes sense that an ex-oil painter with OCD would form dual diagnosis to still be creative, but not have to worry about the you know, my paintings drying for 30 days.
Right. You need spray paint and something quick.
Yeah, I want instant, I want fast. And when it comes to stuff on the street, I love watching the deterioration.
Yeah, it's a fascinating medium on so many levels. And that's one of them, the deterioration. It becomes, you know, there's so many iterations that it goes through.
Yeah, it becomes its own.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You can drive all over LA and see.
Well, yeah, but you can put something up and then drive by it a week later and it looks completely different, and other people have put stuff up and the rain fucked up your paste or your paint or whatever it is, and it's like, you're like, wow, that looks fucking cool. I wish I did that originally. But you get ideas from watching the deterioration. Like even things you don't want to happen inform the next thing. You just have to be open to all those things.
Right.
Yeah, you have to let go of all control.
Yeah, it's like I always tell PADHiA when we're working and we hit a struggle, I always tell her, or like we hit something that we don't think we can get past, I always bring up Bruce the shark from Jaws, because when Steven Spielberg made Jaws, that shark did not work, which is why we don't see it for 2/3 of the film. And because we don't see it for 2/3 of the film, it is much scarier. And he had to make it work. And so like, there's always Bruce the shark somewhere in every mistake, and you just got to be willing to find it.
Well, how about we see, we're going to play a video, and you're going to kind of tour us through your house and some of the pieces you've collected, right?
Yeah. Okay. So these are some collectibles that I've acquired over the years. This is my favorite, one of my favorites, Robbie Canal, the original Contradiction Reagan painting. And that was the first piece of street art that I saw as a kid that spoke against the government. And I realized that, wow, we're allowed to have a voice on the street, and it inspired me. This is Richard Hamilton, also known as the Shadow Man, one of the greatest artists of that scene with Basquiat and Warhol and Herring, and he just got lost in his own insanity. And it's one of my prized possessions. This is my buddy Thrashbird, is a wonderful street artist and a brilliant guy. Up there, you'll see Cornbread, and there's Bells of St. Mary's, Warhol. This is Miss Me, who did this wheat paste on my bedroom door. So imagine inviting women into there. They're not really stoked about it, but and then this is a local guy, Fiend Club LA, who just does these original silk screens. Every one of them's different. This is Al Diaz, Samo, the other half of Samo, Basquiat and Al Diaz. So I had him come and he blasted in my house. Speaking of the Warhol connection, you know, I've always had a fascination with that. And so here we have some of the Marilyns, the black Maryland being my prized possession, I guess, of the collection. That to me is the grail. But to me, it all speaks to the Warhol factory scene more than just the imagery. There's history behind it. A current guy, Free Humanity, did those hearts, and he's a fine artist as well. This is Jamie Reed, who designed the Sex Pistols cover. So again, music and art coming together in a really, really profound way that's iconic. Very simple, hand-drawn Basquiat right there, which I paid very little for in the 80s. This is another Al Diaz Samo piece, and you can see Danny Menick on the walls. This is Chaz Bjorquez, and forgive me if I mispronounce his name, one of the greatest all-time writers and artists. And I think that even Retina studied under him. This is a Shepherd Ferry that he made for me because he loves our band so much. And there's one of the original Keith Haring chalk drawings from the subways.
Wow.
And you know, that those to me, they just go together. They're saying the same things. And here's the electric chair suite. When I'm sorry about the glare, I couldn't afford museum glass. With what these things cost, and then they charge you for museum glass, you're like, fuck that. But so this is the full suite. It's the 10 electric chairs, and I found the juxtaposition of the color and the imagery being so mind-blowing. This is Ethan Arman, who is an 8-year-old. I think he was 5 or 8 when he drew that. And so those were wheat pastes that I was seeing all over town. And I was just so floored by them because they had this freedom to them, this Basquiat freedom to them. And when I found out that it was a child that had drawn the original piece, I was like, no wonder, because that kid's out of his head. He's not thinking. He's not judging as he goes. That's why it resonates. That's why it's true. And so I reached out to his dad, and his dad put those up in my house. And I mean, that's just a small tour. You can see behind me the Al Diaz piece right there. And right here is a little piece by Teacher, who's just one of the most amazing stencil cutters I've ever seen. I mean, I can go on for days about the house, but
it's totally cool.
I really want this thing to be a time capsule of all the art that I love and the people who've inspired me, and have it stand long past my death for people to come in and look at as a snapshot into the era that we're living through, much like if I could go back and look at the Nixon era and the art that was coming out of that in one structure. I want this to be that.
I like that. Curating your own collection.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't even have to curate it, because when I curate stuff, then it's hopefully for other people to enjoy. For me, it's just like, I like that, and it's going here, you know, and it's not for anybody else. I'm glad to share it with you, but you know, I wouldn't call it curated. I would just say that I'm gravitated towards the stuff I love.
I got to throw some art terms out there once in a while, all right?
Yeah, you know, that makes sense.
All right, so for those of you watching, I'm going to ask you to check out 3 booths here on the RAVE site right now. And, you know, like I said earlier, you can kind of do that while you're still listening to us. Those 3 booths are Dual Diagnosis, Life After Death, and PADHiA's booth page is Unfuck Yourself. So those are the 3 booths that you should check out now.
But it's UNFUK yourself.
Forgive me, Mom.
Well, I don't want them to search it and not find it. And also, she cleaned it up for the kids. That's kind of nice.
Right.
It's less offensive.
Less offensive without the C somehow. Yeah.
So Dual Diagnosis made a super cool video. I was blown away by it. I thought it looked so professional. It looked like something you would see at at Art Basel. You know, like you walk into a video room and see this. It was so well done. And we're saving that to the end of the event today. We're going to play it. It's the last thing we're going to exit with. And I want everybody to hang on to that. And then we'll post it on our site so you can see it. Yeah.
I think the thing about the video that's so important is it really gives an inside peek as to what we're doing, that this is not a merch company.
Yeah.
Like, we really take our time and care and hand make every little thing, including everything you see in that movie. Padilla and I handmade, and we came up with the concept, and we wanted that. We've created two heroes that are characters insulated in their own environments because they're so terrified of the outside world.
Yeah.
That's why they're in these weird suits, which are actually dive suits from the 1700s. So we refurbished them, and our friend Lainey Chantal recreated them beautifully, and she's an amazing effects designer and costumer. So if you get a chance, check her out too. But she did all those, and we made the rest, and we plan to make more films.
Yeah.
And set up more installations so people can walk around in those films.
Yeah, there's so much in that. I think it's 3 minutes, right? I mean, there's just so much.
Getting that down to 3 minutes was a nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, it's like in the editing room, they say you got to kill your babies because you fall in love with something, but it's just too long. And you're like, this has to go. I mean, I would have made that thing 6 hours long if I had my way.
Right. Yeah. We're just trying to articulate these, kind of obscure aspects of the human experience, things that people all feel but don't really have words for. And in doing that, create just a greater sense of connection.
But in Cliff Notes terms, if you just remember this, if you do hang out to see the film, that film is really just about two really tragically traumatized souls that find each other and use their trauma to create their own reality of beauty that they're happy in. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're doing. So on a weird level, those two little animated figures are Padilla and I.
Yeah, I got that. And at the end, the color that's brought back into it is spectacular. So
those are all made out of handmade Rorschach inkblot designs that we did and built little figures out of them. So our logo is the Rorschach design because it's such an archaic, he told his patients that there's no wrong answer looking at those ink blots. But if you looked at an ink blot and said, I see a man smashing a woman in the face, he'd lock you up. So there is a wrong answer, Yeah. But so we're playing on a lot of the ancient archaic ways that psychiatry and healing was forced on people. And we're also just kind of lifting the stigma. And one brilliant thing that Padilla always says is that when military soldiers come home after seeing horrific events, right? And the things that they have had to see, the PTSD that they have to deal with, and they are honored and they are awarded and they are revered. Well, people suffer like that all around the world all the time, maybe not in war zones, but they suffer on those levels, and the PTSD, which lives in the body, is just as real, which is why our jackets are military jackets that are old vintage jackets from Vietnam, because we know that whoever wore that jacket then saw the most unimaginable trauma, yet the jacket came back, and we're still going to use it to celebrate him or her and what we're doing.
Amen. Well, thanks, you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.